Hey, Peter Messness here. This week I wanted to talk about like old projects that I think are interesting ideas that we've never launched, and maybe got a few thoughts about actually about the DAO, which is a few years old. Some of you may know about it, some of you may not. So on the like Project Attic. There's a whole class of information in the world that it'd be nice to have like a market assessment of. So and this is, I guess, kind of like what Augur is based off the idea of. There should be prediction markets for everything. One of the things about Augur is that it can be complicated to get stuff set up, or like sometimes you want automated stuff where you don't have to worry as much about like who's saying something happened or didn't happen. So like as a totally random one that's small but I think is interesting would be like court filings. So you have this problem a lot in legal cases where really like a plaintiff or a defendant is not necessarily incentive aligned with their attorney. So depending on the circumstance, attorney's going to get to keep billing if a case goes on, and they're going to stop if a case settles. Now, any good attorney will say, look, I always just want good success for my clients, and I think that's probably true in general. But you have this fundamental incentive alignment problem that means like it can be hard. It can be hard to know how honest someone is being with themselves, even in one of those circumstances. So so one of the interesting things you could do, like I think it would be very helpful for clients of attorneys to get a market assessment about how likely a particular claim or filing is to prevail. And you could probably, as I've talked through this with some lawyer friends, like the simplest thing to do I think is like a motion to dismiss. There are a couple motions that are just based on law that don't have anything to do with facts, and so there's no discovery. I think that'd be interesting. I think it'd be interesting to bet on, predict, hedge your risk on Supreme Court cases. So those are like highly tracked. They're typically very interesting. Yeah, I think that'd be fun. Why not just do that on Augur? I guess you could. That'd be interesting to start making some markets there. Augur is a little, like, I find it a little hard to use with the interface. Like I sort of feel like this particular use case would be better on a website. We can just load it up and see. And as far as economics, like you could do it a bunch of ways. A prop bet. So there's basically like, what are the legal words, like denied or granted or whatever a judge would say about it. There's just a couple. There's really only like 2 or 3 outcomes. There's like yes, no, and to be continued, I imagine. And so prop bets are one way to do that, where you just bet against each other. I think that'd be interesting. Again, Augur's got a markets mechanism for doing that, which is another way to do it. Economically the same, but psychologically a little bit different. So that's fun, and it might be a lot of these are like better off not in some single platform interface, but just targeted at like the people who care about these sorts of things. So that gets to a whole class of prediction / investing topics that I'm interested in. Like what about content prediction? So like I've been probably every few months since 2012 keep like thinking about how you could change Reddit's economic model. And I have some ideas, but they're not fully baked yet after 6 years. So I'll probably hold them for another one. But if you've got ideas about what to do about Reddit's economic model, send them to me. And I think one of the things I think is most interesting to think about is that Reddit has ads, far fewer ads than most content outlets, and they're run more efficiently and so on, and that's interesting. But like it turns out that it's much more effective to get something like voted up onto the homepage in terms of clicks than it is to have an ad placed on the homepage. And so because of that, there's this large kind of like astroturfing community. And every so often, like the Reddit community as a whole has like a few triggers. Like one is like censorship, and like one is like, does Spez support like neo-Nazi nationalists because they allow subreddits like the Donald to exist, and then one of them is on this astroturfing thing. Like, do users with a high amount of karma and a lot of followers like sell their influence on the platform? And I think that's an interesting question. I think having a better economic model for Reddit's content would probably help things like new submissions. And I have some ideas about it. I'm not ready to share all of mine yet, but I'm curious about yours too, and we can maybe integrate them all. I think that's it for Attic projects now. I got 50 more, so we got to save some for next week. Last time I talked about MASTs, these Merkle's abstract syntax trees, and one really interesting thing you could do with them is use them, kind of mush them with neural networks. So there's like a whole class of problems in AI that I think nobody's thinking about right now, but that if you have some blockchain experience, you might think is worth considering. So, like for instance, how do you know the output of a given neural net is from that neural net? And that is not currently a thing people worry very much about, but is gonna be a thing people worry about, especially once neural nets start triggering police panic calls, remote gun firings. There's this kind of like whole area of trusted computation on the AI side that I don't think anybody's working on, as far as I can see from looking at the literature. So I think that's like a thing that is interesting, and also kind of like points a path towards integrating some of this into blockchains, where blockchains like strongly prefer, from a design space, data that is sort of like provably good in some way. Maybe not provably good opinion or provably good bit of information, but a bit of information that provably came from executing a known program with input sources. And that's why MASTs were like so interesting to me at some level. So I think you could combine MASTs up with neural nets. I mean, like, there's nothing theoretically wrong with using the MAST technology to get provable output from a neural net. Like, my math though is that it's impractical. Running a given picture through ImageNet is something like, I think, 20 billion different operations, and we're headed up towards a pretty large Merkle proof if we think about that for one image, right? So if we've got to kind of like hit every branch in that code, it's going to be a big tree. It's going to be a lot to parse. So, but I have been mulling that over, and I think there's probably some interesting work to do there about like, could those technologies combine up, or like what do you need to add to get provable output from a known, safe, or trusted neural net. I think that's it for this week. We'll talk more next week about whatever's on my list, and I hope you guys have a great day.